So if I have to bug out, I promise it's not you, it's me. So
Not a
all
problem.
right.
I'll take it as a personal affront.
You
Well,
can ignore him.
okay,
We always.
you do
My
you.
life is to be a personal affront to Brian. So
Oh, all right then. Well, fuck him. All right.
Okay, so tonight is our second, actually, round of doing a panel discussion about how to recruit and retain younger members. And we're talking younger members, we're talking like 20s, college age, in that age range, just in case anybody thought this was maybe about littles, not quite as much. So I guess I'll have everybody go around that's on the panel and introduce themselves, and I'm just going to go in order of where you guys are on my screen. So Miles, you want to go first?
Sure. Hey, I'm Miles Ridley. I joined the SCA when I was 19 years old, so there's that. I'm now 25, so.
Elaine, you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Elaine of the Steps. I'm the current Baron of the Steps. I've been playing for about 15 years.
Awesome, thank you. Orazio?
I'm Orazio DeCisi. I've been playing since my freshman year of college and was first exposed to the SCA when I was in middle school as part of a demo in San Antonio.
Awesome, thank you. Valka?
I joined the SCA straight out of college by going to someone's house who I had never met, which was clearly very safe.
Clearly.
Still alive, I didn't get murdered.
Yay, you didn't die.
Future panel discussion point.
Right. Brian?
I am Brian Oyuliam. I joined the SA when I was about 12 or so I was kind of technically the baby of this group when I started, but I've stuck through it all these years.
Awesome, thank you guys.
And Elena is supposed to be joining me when she gets back from her physical therapy appointment. She started playing in about 2012 in her late 20s.
Perfect. Okay, so first question for you guys. And this may be something that, I don't know how many of you have recruited in a college setting or not. So, if you have experience with that, go ahead and jump in. But give me some things that you think that we need to keep in mind in general in the SCA when recruiting and retaining college age players.
Who wants to go first?
You spoke first. You can go first.
All right. So one of the big things I think you have to keep in mind, especially if you're from a group that is not based around a college, so that it's not sort of already ingrained in the culture of the group, is that you should expect these people to leave, whether it's when they finish college or when they get further into their college career and they need to focus on something else, or because they decide it's not for them. You should see this as a long-term investment for the SCA writ large. This isn't necessarily going to be the person that you're recruiting and hoping is going to be your seneschal in 5 years, or you're landed. They could be seneschal while they're, actively involved. But I think just one of the most important things to remember is it's an investment for the SCA writ large. So I have more things, but that's a good one.
No, I think that's a good point, because I've actually heard people say, well, why would we recruit at a college, because they're not going to stay. So you have to have a different mindset about it.
The flip side of that is that a lot of people sometimes do stay. So for example, at UT in Austin is growing so much that a lot of people who graduate from there will stay there. And the same thing in Denton, here in DFW at UNT. All my friends who went to UNT still live in Denton, Dallas, or Fort Worth. So just because you expect them to leave, if you build a strong enough community, a lot of them will stay because it's who they know, and there's job openings. So
that is true. John, did you have something?
Yeah, I had something related to what Orazio was saying. Was that when you're getting these new people in from college, that potentially they may leave. something to consider is they may bring friends, or they may have friends who join later, and they'll be like, well, yeah, I was in that years ago. And depending upon what their experience is, that's what they're going to tell their friends that come to them.
Mm-hmm.
So even if that person doesn't stay, as long as they have a good experience, when their buddy comes out and said, hey, I'm trying out this new SCA thing, do you know anything about it? They can go, yeah, those people were cool with me. If I wasn't so busy, I'd go back. So
100%. That was like one of the main things I wanted to focus on tonight. It's like a lot of it's like a PR campaign with the way that you handle it. And you never know when they're going to come back too. Like I was in the SCA for 2.5 years in college. Then the Corps ate my life the rest of my time at A&M. Then I joined the Army and was gone for another 4 years. And then I came back and immediately was super involved in Bringwalad because I built a strong foundation when I was in college. And a friend said like, hey, do you want to come back onto the SCA? And because I had that positive experience, it was an easy choice.
Yeah. And when I used to work, I was on performance coming into the Texas Renaissance Festival, and for a few years they had this thing that we had to memorize. It was this whole credo, but at the very top of it, and I think this goes to another meeting we had where somebody said everybody is a hospitaler. Yes and no, but the thing that they would say is they will see us and smile, they will meet us and laugh, they will leave us and remember fondly. And the idea being, it's all about what you inspire. So and I know it's a tall order, but to get everybody on board and make sure that, whenever you meet a new person, make sure that they have a as positive an experience as you can, so that when they go out into the world, they'll carry that with them. So that's all I had to say on the matter. So thank you.
Yeah. Salvador, did you have something?
A couple of things. I've been doing this since I was 16 back in 1977. That tells you how long I've been playing. One of the things is don't treat them like children. I think that's one of the most, I teach college. The worst thing you can do to a college student is treat them like a child. Don't forget them. When you bring them to an event or invite them to an event, try to make sure that they're involved, or try to make sure that you touch base with them throughout the day. I actually set up a St. Cameron campsite at all of Eldrin's events, and they camp with me, and I give them stuff to do. I assign them places. I even have a little booklet that they can sign off on. They have people that work with sign off on. So at the end of the day, I give them little prizes for who did what. Everyone gets something, but it's just the idea that I'm trying to encourage them to meet people and participate. And finally, the other thing is that one of the most successful ways I've done this is to always start a campus club, even if it's not going to turn into a canton or a college, because you have a steady stream of students coming in, because every year, every semester, they have the meet and greet for all the student organizations, and they see you there. Cameron absolutely loves us because we bring a little bit of splash that they don't have otherwise. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else on the panel have anything to add about things to think about that wasn't already said?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the core things whenever you're working with college students is to build friendships with them or connect them with people who will build friendships with them. They're not looking for people to give them information. Like they're getting their professional education. They're in class a long time during the week. They don't want to come and have a history lesson, and they don't want to come and be just dumped on with a bunch of info about an organization. Just connect them with friends that do things that they want to do in the SCA, and then they'll stick. And especially, one other thing to definitely keep in mind is college students tend to be very resource scarce, whether it's time or capability to travel or food. One of the reasons that I stuck around is the very first event that I went to was somebody's open shop night where they were making clothes with each other, etc. And on the table, there was a little box of money in there, and they just said, well, put what you can in the box. If you can't put anything in the box, just don't worry about it. It's fine. It'll all come out in the end. And that let me explore the SCA, explore the arts, still come up with a fighting kit so that I could still go out and fight, but I didn't feel bad about resources and et cetera. And that same group drove me around to events and introduced me to other young people in the kingdom who I formed a bond with anywhere throughout Texas. So I didn't know where I was going to go whenever I graduated. However, I had a good friend group, or at least one friend everywhere throughout the state of Texas. So as long as I didn't move away, I knew that the SCA was going to keep me engaged in a social capacity. And that was real solid stability for me moving on. And I knew even if I ended up somewhere in Seattle, Washington or something, I could still form good friends in the SCA, because by that point, I'd made so many friends that I realized, you know, these people are everywhere in this organization. This is a great organization. And it all started because people weren't trying to educate me, et cetera. They weren't not necessarily talking down, but they weren't trying to teach me things. They were just trying to let me enjoy things with people who also enjoy them. So that's kind of the mindset that I take when talking to college students is treat them like you're going to build a friendship with them, and then get them to be friends with people who they enjoy doing things with. That's really what they're looking for at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
Miles,
think that's
one of the
great
things,
advice for anybody, really. But
yeah, that's a great point. One of the things that we've seen with some of the DEI work is don't treat people like novelties, treat them like people. And I think that can be specifically applied to college and younger students. They are just one of us, or they want to be one of us, or want to think about being one of us. So just treat them like one of us and bring them into the fold the best way you can, particularly if it is something like college students with their limited financial resources. But another point specifically about colleges, there are a lot of different types of schools that we need to focus on. Like, it was very difficult for me to recruit in college because I went to a commuter campus. Almost nobody lived on campus. And that's a huge difference from something like Oklahoma State or Texas A&M. So you need to understand the dynamics and demographics of the university and tailor your approach to that. Always figure out, do we need to try to put stuff on campus if we can? Building a club would be really good. That would never work where I went to school because nobody wanted to stay there after dark because it wasn't in the best part of Houston. Even though we had fighter practice there for many years, we made it work. But
a good thing to note is, like, if you are wanting to dedicate time to getting people from college campuses, your best bet is going to be having your practice near that campus. They probably won't let you have it on campus. But for example, at UT, there's tons of parks and stuff just like right off campus. So you would have your practice there. It's clearly accessible to all the people who live on campus. There's bus routes for the people who don't. But it's not enough to just get them there. You have to continue to make them want to stay. So keep in mind, like, we are very fighter centric, but if the first thing you tell every single person is, hey, do you want to hit your friends in the face like with a stick? Most people are going to say no. And that's something I realized when I had to recruit for my Taekwondo team, is like, we couldn't just go out and be like, hey, do you want to kick your friends in the face? Because, like, no, they don't. Some people do, but most people don't. So you have to shift your messaging to be things that young people actually care about. So I went from, hey, come fight, to telling people like, oh, I lost weight freshman year. And all of a sudden we had this giant influx of women join my Taekwondo team. So just keep in mind, just because you enjoy something about the SCA, maybe don't start with the extremes of you can hand stitch your own garb only, or hit your friends in the face. Just be like, yeah, we can teach you to sew, like, if that's what you want to do. It's a really good workout. We'll loan you everything to begin with. You don't need money. And then follow through on that, because otherwise they'll show up, and if you're like, just kidding, we need your money, they'll leave. So you have to continue working to retain them after you've gotten them to come to something.
Absolutely.
So-
Salvador? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bao.
So I was going to say, well, the barrier to entry for the SCA is pretty high. So for college kids, you have to make it more accessible to them. And then you kind of have to build them up. I think a lot of times we think about where they're going to be in the future and their transient nature, but we don't think about what they need at that time and at that place. So they just kind of need someone that will teach them a little bit about the SCA, and to show them or teach them about things that they're interested in. And then we just want to make things easier for them to join. So moving practices to where they, they can go, or doing things like that, or things that we need to try to think about doing. I know as people who are involved in the SA for a long time, we are very comfortable with how we do things, and things don't ever really change because why should they? But if we want to appeal to a younger demographic, then sometimes we have to do things that maybe we're not comfortable with in order to make the people in college more comfortable, because we are already here to stay. We're trying to get younger folks who aren't committed.
Yep, makes perfect sense. Okay, Salvador, your turn.
Yeah, one thing is, that you do have to check. Our campus allows fighter practice. Matter of fact, most of our meetings now take place on campus. We have a room reserved because we have a student club. We're able to reserve spaces on campus. Our city parks cost money. Go figure, right? Secondly, we actually started something here a number of years ago in Eldern, which is called a newcomer's kit. And this kit is a tunic, a belt, fabric belt, a pouch, and simple feast gear. And we give it to them and we say, this is yours to keep. When you are done with it, pass it on or return it. So if you want to do your own garb later, great, we will help you do that, but this is yours to keep. And then if you don't want it anymore, you're going to quit, or you have a friend you want to give it to, great. Just make sure it gets recycled back into the SCA. And I think that's been a really great thing, because especially with the college kids, they don't have the money. And I personally have started a thing that I do with our campus club. I cook for them at events. So if anyone's ever been to Salin, they see this large camp there and my kitchen is out there, but that's just me. I do that, but actually recently the Baronies actually started donating food because they felt bad for me. So
I think this is actually a really good point, in that when you're working on, because we're talking a lot about recruitment, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but there is a definite difference between recruitment and retention. And one of those big parts with college students not having as many resources is like getting them the stuff they need to feel like they can participate for retention. Any place where you can push that to being an institutionalized part of your group is going to be way better in the long term, because say, with those kits, you're going to have some people that just, geed off with the stuff. It's going to be gone. They're going to keep it. They're never going to show up again. That's a tunic and a belt and whatever that you've lost. If that happens where someone's like giving their old garb up to do that, or whatever it is, then it's going to become like, well, I tried to invest in somebody and now I'm out clothes. As opposed to already knowing what that stuff is set aside for, and also specifically making sure that it's like, it's a T-tunic that you made in 3 hours, whatever it is. Where it's, looks good enough, but it's not something that you're going to be upset about disappearing. I think those are just important steps to take, especially if you're in a group that maybe hasn't had a history of recruiting recently, so that there's not as much of a sticker shock through the process of trying to get that, 2 out of 12 or whatever it is that will stick around out of the people that were excited when they first showed up.
Yep, exactly.
Remember though, don't use free giveaways as a crutch. So from a sales perspective,
100% that.
I've worked in sales actually right out of college. So if you give someone free stuff, that's nice. But like Horacio said, some of those people will just take your stuff and go. And also, if someone's not emotionally invested, they'll be like, oh, these weird people just gave me a tunic. Like, giving someone free stuff is not a recruiting method. It's beneficial and it helps, but you can't just take it and run and be like, oh, well, they told me to give out free stuff and we're giving out free stuff now and we're still not recruiting anyone. The retention part of it is going to be emotional investment. And where the tunic and the things fall into that is making them feel like they are cared for. But just giving them that is not, people have given me stuff all the time. You're like, thanks, and you can tell they like don't really care about you. So you can't just be like, okay, great, you're part of the SCA, bye forever. You still have to talk to them. And like I mentioned in the last panel, it's better, again, to offer to teach them. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't just go running to Torin every time I need a T-tunic, so she taught me to do that. And that made me feel like I had something that I could contribute back now that I have the funds. So if you are going to give them a way to be able to give back, and then they'll feel like they're part of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's definitely
tools. Like, I feel like tools like that, like the giveaways, are something that really help with the retention factor, like everybody else has been saying. I think that's the, like, you've been showing up for a little while and you're awesome, here's some stuff to help you along. It's the, when you see the glimmer of attachment starting, it's more of the positive reinforcement as opposed to, hey, you're new, have a thing.
Let Volky do the heavy lifting. Like.
Yes. Another thing that we've talked about resources a couple of times, and time resource is actually something I feel like we don't pay enough attention to on recruitment or retention, because I know I've sat where people are trying to recruit and they get so excited and they talk about all the things we do, and it just sounds like a part-time, if not a full-time job. And I think that it's important to balance that when you're trying to recruit people. That remember that there's like college kids are limited in resources, not only monetarily, but also time-wise. So finding key things to latch onto, those learning opportunities, instead of flooding with them with all of the options. Yeah. Really finding those key things.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense.
It's really important to build a rapport, and since their time and stuff is limited, if you aren't an expert in what they're interested in, just point them towards someone else. You don't have to be the person that builds that rapport, but you're trying to build connections with the college folks that will help them stay. And if you're not the one that's most well suited for it, then find someone who is better suited for it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. John and then Ivo had their hands up.
Okay. First of all, just from a marketing standpoint, this was touched on earlier, if you give away free stuff, people don't put a value to it. I would suggest, if I may, two things. One, hey, we've got this event coming up in a month. We're going to have a period clothing making get together. You can come in and throw something together real quick, a T-tunic, whatever. If the barony, the shire, whatever, provides the materials, it belongs to that or locale. If you bring your own materials, if you run down to Joann's and buy a couple of yards of fabric for $3 to $5 a yard, you make it, it's yours. And barring that, rather than giving hand-me-outs, have at the, tell the new person, show up at the event, we will have some loaner kit for you, loaner feast gear, loaner clothing. Show up at the event, put it on at the event, use the stuff at the event, and at the end of the event, give it back to us. And at that point, they've had the experience of using the stuff, and they found that the stuff, while not perfect, was, hey, I had stuff and I could participate. Now they want to invest in stuff. And then you can help them on their path to getting their stuff. The other thing real quick that I haven't seen touched on here, and maybe this is not the point, this is about recruiting, and maybe we'll get to it further in the conversation, is how do you get yourself in front of these people in the first place, especially when they've got so many other things competing for their time, So if that's probably further down in the conversation. Anyway, that's what I had to offer.
Okay, thanks. Ivo, there you are. Everybody moved around on my screen.
Yeah.
I just had a objective observation from my own history. When I started with Moonshadow in '97, we were between 15 and 30 people at a meeting, half of which were students 18 to 26, and about 2/3 of what was left were employees of Oklahoma State University. And that continued. There were some ebbs and flows, of course. When we became a province about 15, I guess about 14 years ago now, we were at our high point, 50 people to a meeting on average. There was a point where we stopped recruiting on campus. I don't think it was a conscious decision. I think a bunch of us got sick one time and that just scrubbed it. We did not pick up on that again. We literally went 3 years without recruiting on campus. And by the time that third year rolled around, our meetings were down to low double digits. And we had no one under the age of 30 attending regularly. So we had the double handicap of not only were our numbers down, but we were now a bunch of frankly old people trying to appeal to 18-year-olds.
Yep.
And there's another thing that really helped. Now this is an example. I'm not holding it up as the Holy Grail because it's not, and it's a double-edged sword. One of our best recruiting techniques was the Lion Dragon Guard because it wasn't just a fighting unit. It was a brotherhood, and I use that, both genders included. It was a family. It offered the tabards weren't garb. They were borderline holy relics. I mean, they were treated with the type of respect as a Marine Corps dress blue uniform, and to this day still are. And the emotional investment of being part of that unit, the return on investment that kids got, and I say kids because a lot of them, we refer to them as our short-termers. They did 2 years. 6 months training, 1 year fighting, 6 months wind down. They never showed up again, but they're still welcome at parties. That was great. And I will take a joking issue with something Valka said. 4 of our recruits, when I was hospitaler, I recruited them when 4 of them walked up, and I said, "So, who has a penchant for violence?" And one raised his hand. "Okay, who'd like to develop a penchant for violence?" The other 3 raised their hand, and all of them went on to have glorious 2-year-long, highly violent fighting careers, and they all went on to do other things with their lives. They were great SCAers.
Okay, but then what happens when we want to recruit artisans and rapier fighters and cut and catch fighters? We can't only recruit athletes, and the SCA has so much stuff. If you're going to go out and recruit, you need to understand, like, ask them what they like, and if they don't say sports or boxing or something, be able to talk about something else. Just because I was someone who could be recruited that way doesn't mean that most of my friends can. One of my friends straight up doesn't like fighting, but joined Taekwondo because I was there and the rest of her friends were there, and there were other things she could do outside of just sparring.
Okay. First of all, it was said in good humor, but also, let me tell you a quick bit about the 4 we recruited. All 4 of them were not jocks. 3 of them reported having been bullied by athletes in high school. And I believe 3 of them did go on artistic careers in other groups when they moved away. Yes, you're right. You want a nice, diverse crowd. The other end of it is fighting is a highly athletic, demanding sport that favors the young, and a lot of 18-year-olds they want to sow their wild oats while they still can. I throw it out there for information. I'm no authority, and Lord knows there's a reason why our numbers have gone up and down, because it's a moving target.
So the general point is we need to be able to tailor our responses and our techniques to get the individuals that we are speaking to at the time, rather than a blanket statement or some other missteps. It's okay to go out there and say, do you want to hit your friends with sticks? No. Do you want to paint nice things? Do you want to get involved in the performing arts? Show them the variety that we have. And Melody from ELFC talks about asking what their everyday interests are. And that's a good point. Everyday interests, or what would you like to be your everyday interest that you don't get to do? Mm-hmm. Part of why I stick with Bardic and heraldry is because I loved doing that stuff in high school, and when I opted to not go down that path professionally, I needed an outlet for it, and the SCA is that outlet for it. So I don't get to do my performance art stuff, my vocal performance stuff in my everyday life, and I miss it. So I get to have that outlet, and that keeps me involved in the SCA. So we need to try to tailor our points to the individual, but throw that wide net and then latch on with the fishing hook to whatever they pick up on.
Absolutely. Yep, makes sense. Okay, we've got some hands up. I see Fergus has had his up for a while, and then John.
So much to say. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let me give you a little bit of history first. Okay. I've been with the College of St. Felix. I started it 20 years ago. I'm actually 21 now, and was the advisor for 15 of those years, and have since become the advisor emeritus. The thing that we found as far as recruiting, we've gone from groups as big as 75 down to 4 at time, because a college is a migratory group. It's by definition is. You have to rig up a connection with the barony that's local to them to be able to help them and support them. And you actually have to take it from a point of view of a college student. Everybody's heard of SCA 101, right?
Mhm.
The initial class. Okay, you've got to think of it as SCA 102, 103, Introduction to Heraldry, 104, Introduction to Fighting, 105, and all the things in between. And the way we do it is we do something like His Excellency Salvador did, but we found that the first 2 meetings, the first 2 weeks that they come out and actually start to meet with us and do the things, we give an SCA 101 lecture, and then then we give a demonstration of this is what fighting is, this is what heraldry is, this is what everything, whatever you're interested in, go over to this section and do it. That's where the barony comes in helping out. Second week, we do an extension of that and saying, you know, this is why we play, this is what we do it, this is what we're in it for. The third week, we have a tea-tunic making class, and we provide them the material, and they make it. If you teach a man to fish, it's the same principle. Mm-hmm. Okay? And like I said, for the years, we found that we started doing this about 6-7 years ago, and since then we have not gone less than 25 people in the group, because we have a hardcore core. And it's people call them kids. Don't call them kids, they're young adults. And they actually, it's best if you take the young adults that are really, really interested, train them and tell them, you are the ones that are going to be promoting the group, because like attracts like. They go out there and they talk to the students out on the field during the club day and say, this is who we are, this is what we do. I go out there, and if they get somebody really, really interested and wants to know some of the history, okay, I'll kick off to the side and tell them, okay, this is what the old guy says about it right here, but if you want to know what's really going on, talk with the young people who are actually doing it. So we're all going in the same direction, I think, is what we're saying, is what I've been getting. And that's what works for my crew. I don't know. Discuss.
Well, I want to get us through, because this is just our first question, and I actually want to touch back on something that was asked a little bit ago. So, John, you'll be our last comment on this question, and then we're going to move on to another question. You're muted, John.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so to address what Volka was talking about, you know, you can't just push the fighting. I think that's absolutely correct. And this would tie into a larger marketing strategy. But I think what you do, instead of saying, here's this thing, it's like, here's this menu. And whether it's your demonstrations, in your promotional material, your website, whatever it is, you're selling another world to these people. And it's a world filled with all kinds of wonderful things that are available, and a world that allows you that if that thing that you're interested in, you know, 12th century Lithuanian or whatever, if that's not being done, well, here's a world that you can make that happen. So instead of just selling the fighting, which that's a good selling point. Sell the whole world. Sell the whole SCA world. Give them a menu. Say, here's some things you can do, or you can make up your own thing, but we're going to give you a place to do that. And I think that addresses what Volka was talking about. And again, you know, your approach to that probably needs to be a well thought out strategy that does a number of different things. But again, that's probably another
My
conversation.
approach was not to talk to them about every single thing because they will be overwhelmed. My approach is to straight up ask them, what do you like? So, for example, I have a coworker who I've been slowly trying to recruit. I know that she's really into art. She's a digital artist. I haven't been talking to her about fighting at all. I've been telling her specifically about Scrabble and Illumination because she enjoys drawing, but also the rest of the arts. And if she asks me about fighting, I answer the questions, but I don't bother to talk about fighting in service because that's clearly not what she's interested in. It'll just overwhelm her if she thinks that she has to understand all this stuff. And people will think that they have to understand all this stuff if you throw it out.
Right. And your situation is probably a little different in that you have a person that you have an established relationship with, and you can kind of gauge where their interests are.
Well, I think,
guys, we do have other things to get to tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately, yeah. What we're saying is that you do have to target to your audience, and the best way to do that is to ask them the question and have an answer.
I think a lot of times we are so caught up in what we are interested in the SCA, and we have all the experience as longtime SCAers that we don't listen to the college or the people in college or the newcomers. We don't listen to the younger folks to see what they're interested in. We are so caught up in trying to show them everything that made the SCA great for us 20, 30, 50 years ago that we forget that, you know, it's a different time nowadays, and that sometimes we should just listen to what the newer folks are interested in, what to do, and then we kind of lead them towards that. But I think it begins with actually listening to them in the first place and letting them be able to voice their opinions.
100% agree. Okay, I am going to put out a new question, and I don't mind having others not on the panel speak, but I feel like some of the panel members haven't gotten a lot of opportunity to speak, so I'm going to give them first preference, and then I'll come back around to our other non-panel members after our panel members have spoken. So tell me, because this question was brought up a little bit ago, how do you get in front of these college age students? We've talked about, you know, how we recruit, we've talked about how we retain, but physically, how do you meet them? How do you get in front of them? What strategies have you guys used?
I'll go ahead and start. I think the key part is targeting events in your local area that college kids will attend. If you just show up to a college campus and you're a 55-year-old male and you're there with a bunch of other 55-year-old males and you're trying to recruit college-age students, they're going to think you're a creep, whether or not you are. We know that you're lovely people. They don't know that. They just make the assumptions based on what they see. The key part is going to things that they're already going to where there's a wide array of people there. For instance, conventions like anime conventions work tremendously. If you go to an anime convention with an SCA demo and focus your attention there, it's great. And then once you recruit one or two, then you can start approaching the college campuses, et cetera, with the younger face, because like attracts like. But if you don't get one through the door to begin with, you're just wasting your time showing up, and you don't know how you're being perceived at these things. So you need to focus on places that they're already there. Like library demos aren't really the greatest places to recruit young people anymore. Maybe back in the 80s or the 70s it was, because that's how people got information, right? That's where they went for fun and entertainment and et cetera. But my generation mostly likes to go out and experience things. So anime conventions are a great place, you know, local viewings of, say, Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones when it was popular, or The Witcher, etc., gaming shops. Those are great places to have a solid demo and show them, hey, this world is out here, and then spark their interest. Goes back to kind of that first point. Speak to them, find out what they're interested in, and then help them adapt and find their place in the SCA. So the key to breaking into those places isn't necessarily just to go through the front gate with a battering ram. It's to go find a place wherever their army is camped out and hang out there so that they see you and come to you, etc. So you're not trying to go head on at the place where they're all hanging out. You're trying to be somewhere that they naturally are with common interests.
Makes perfect sense. Thank you. Anybody else?
At my university, they literally would have weeks where all the clubs could just set up a table in the main thoroughfares of the university, and we would table there. And that's where I did all of my in-person recruiting. Granted, it's going to depend on how officially affiliated you can be with the university, because they typically don't like clubs that at least haven't gone through their process to come on campus. But at the same time, they let Girl Scouts come sell cookies on campus. So maybe if you contact them, you can get on campus. Otherwise, there are bars, there are restaurants. If you do a little bit of research, you can find out where these people are going off campus. Have your populace meeting there. Like, it doesn't always have to be like, oh, we have to go have a fighter practice in this, like, so that they can see us fighting. Like, you can just go do a populace meeting and take a couple brochures, be like, oh, here's this easily accessible space that you can see more stuff we go to. It doesn't always have to be a big flashy thing. I mean, everyone loves free t-shirts. That's just not a great way to retain them. It's a good way to get them to come to your booth. But I've gone to lots of booths to take t-shirts that I gave them fake email addresses for. So just because something gets you a lot of reach per se doesn't mean that it gets you a lot of engagement. So you want to go where the fish are biting. So for example, we did a demo from Steps at a hockey game that Castorin put together, and they got tons of emails from people saying, please send me more info. So like Comic-Cons are great because you know those people are already nerdy, but like we said in college, their time's on a premium. But keep in mind, like, just because we want young people, that doesn't automatically mean college age. Like, I'm graduated, but I'm still only 24, and the same is the case with Miles. So as young adults, we still have to find stuff to do. So that's, putting your events on Facebook, because Facebook will automatically go to people and say, here's 5 things happening near you. And if you live, so down the street, there's a space for me that's kind of like a park surrounded by restaurants. And you don't have to have an official fighter practice there every week, but just showing up there every now and again, having meetings there, hanging out there. So just keep in mind, it's not all about college kids. There are other young adults that you can recruit, and especially people who have just graduated, like myself. I moved back to Dallas with no friends. So when I joined the SCA, that was all of my Dallas friends. And then I moved houses after moving back to Dallas and moved closer to my night. So don't get so focused on like, I have to get on this college campus. If I don't get on this college campus, I can't recruit any young people. Like, don't be afraid to go off campus, look for spaces, public parks. Dog parks usually have a lot of young people because we have no friends. We only have dogs. Stuff like that.
That's a great idea, because then there's dogs too. So yeah, I'm in.
Also dogs.
Exactly.
Hi, Briar.
Do not hold the practice inside the fenced area. Hold it outside the fenced area.
Good call.
Wear your garb to the dog park.
There you go.
I have worn wool hoods to the dog park in the cold and told people about the SCA. Granted, I wasn't trying to recruit them because I was like 2 days into the SCA at this point, but don't get so pigeonholed into thinking that like, I have to go do this in person on campus, that you don't look around and be like, oh, there's a minor league hockey team, and most players in the minor leagues are going to be young guys, and their friends will probably come watch them every now and then. Or like, look, like I said, Facebook will suggest events, and that's why you want your events on there. Look on there for other opportunities for your local group to go to. You don't have to get on campus. It's nice, but you don't have to.
Yes, and one other point that I forgot to bring up when I was talking about not doing on-campus per se approaches and looking for those events, just like Valka was talking about, is another major benefit is you have time to plan for those items. You can reach out to anybody on this panel or any number of young persons throughout the kingdom, and we'll be willing to travel for a large demo and a large event. I won't be willing to travel just to go to Oklahoma State's open night. But if there's a Comic-Con there, yeah, I'm there. I'm there, and I'm representing the SCA, and I'm helping out, even if it is in Oklahoma. So that lets you pull your resource so that like can recruit like, and you're putting really our best foot forward. Not necessarily our best foot forward, but our most likely foot to succeed with the people that you're trying to recruit, because it's the most similar to them forward.
The most relatable foot.
Yes, there you go.
Why are we still talking about feet?
Tangent.
Because footwork's important, Elaine.
I don't know about that.
I know.
Okay. So we this was one of our questions last time, and we actually didn't get to it. And I know we said this wasn't necessarily about kids, but to Valka's point, there are some people, right out of college that, are having kids and might be looking for something to do with their kids. They're younger adults still, but not necessarily that college age. So talk to me, and I know Master Brian, I think you have some experience with this, about, maybe if we present more of that family type atmosphere to, again, targeting our, exposure and saying, hey, we have stuff for kids to do, then, is that a possibility to recruit some young families that way?
So it absolutely can be. The most important thing that I've seen, and a lot of this came up while I was Kingdom Seneschal as well. There were a lot of big pushes to get more kids and families at events, but also someone who started as a preteen in the SCA. That age group, that category wants to be with people their age and slightly older. So by building up a network of activities that truly involve the youth, and it's not just what the MOC has kind of been abused as in some places, as kind of a babysitting service, but actually having real engaging activities for either the kids themselves or the kids with the parents, preferably, is going to be the best way to get those families to stay in, because we're going to see a lot of people who are into the SCA when their kids are too young to make their own decisions, and then they kind of fall out for a little while when their kids get into things like Little League and karate and whatever other stuff that they're going to do. So it's important to understand that that whole family engagement is what's going to keep people involved. Elaine has a young daughter who is absolutely fantastic and is one of the best people in the world. She's my page, so I can say that. But it's important to understand that they've got a balance between what she wants to do with her friends at school and the time that she wants to play for SCA, wants to pick up a rapier and play with us. But by having other kids her age and by making meaningful relationships with folks in the SCA, like myself, like Elena, who she actually knew before Elena was in the SCA, they knew each other outside. So it's a safe person with another safe person, seemingly safe person, if you can say that about me, giving her buy-in, essentially. It's all about building buy-in for that group, and that extends to the young adults as well. It's getting them buy-in, making them actually part of the group and not just someone that you're trying to cater something to. Build a network for them.
Absolutely. Yep, that makes sense. Okay, we only have about 4 minutes left, so I'm going to throw one more question out there, and if people can't stay, if we run over, that's fine, but I just want to try to hit one more because we didn't get very far again tonight, guys, but we had a lot of good discussions, so that's okay. So we've talked about things to do and ways to recruit, ways to retain. What do you think are the biggest stumbling blocks or the biggest mistakes that a group might make when trying to get this younger adult age group?
Well, for the retention side, I think a lot of times you have these new folks that come in, and usually they have a lot more enthusiasm. and they have these ideas and they want to do things. But a lot of times we are like, well, we've done that before and that didn't work, or nah, we shouldn't do that, or that's not something we want to do. And we do a lot to quench their enthusiasm. For what we're trying to do in the steps is we have a bunch of new folks, and they are newer to the SCA, and we kind of let them run with things. They have a lot of enthusiasm, and they want to do things that we've never really thought about. And sometimes they find success, and sometimes they don't. But we want to give them the chance to explore their path in the SCA instead of imposing our restrictions on them, so that they can't do anything unless we tell them they can.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Other stumbling blocks from people on the panel?
Yeah, I completely agree with Bao there. Really listen to their interest and kind of let them do that thing. They'll eventually, as they keep coming to the SCA, even if they want to be the Witcher at their first event, they'll eventually become more and more historical with every event that they go to. It's okay if they think that they're Geralt of Rivia at their first event. Just let them do it. Let them have fun. Let them enjoy themselves. Like, don't mess with their parade. Just let them go with it, and then eventually they'll adapt more and more. I've got one story about this. I'm going to try to keep it pretty brief, and that's actually me myself. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. And I'm also addicted to World of Warcraft. I've been addicted since I was 11. So when I joined the SCA, I wanted to be Bwenin. That was what I wanted my name to be, because that was my World of Warcraft name, Bwenin. And I wanted to look like Faramir and shoot a bow. So one of the best things that my group did for me, and it was Hell's Gate, is they came up and they made me a Faramir costume, and I used my Lord of the Rings cloak with it. So there's actually me in my Faramir costume with my Lord of the Rings cloak off of lotr.net. Now, obviously, you see me at an event, and I'm not that anymore. I'm Master Miles Ridley in full Elizabethan garb, yada, yada, yada. But I never would have got there if they didn't let me be a World of Warcraft loving, Lord of the Rings loving fantasy person wanting to be an elf and shooting people out of a tree or something. They heard that, and then they adapted me to what I could be interested in the SCA, and now I'm here, and I'm recruiting a lot of young people on a yearly basis to the group. It's okay.
Absolutely.
They will eventually. They're not going to radically change your game just because they want to be an elf. Like that's not going to happen. And they'll come around eventually. So just let them be what they want to be. That's the biggest part, and be their friend. That's all anybody wants, and that's the biggest thing that young people want when they're joining the SCA, is to be a nerd with other nerds and not be judged for it.
Absolutely.
And if
I
they
agree.
don't come around, but you're nice about it and you're their friend, like if they go, the SCA wasn't for me, but there were some really cool people in there, that's good. That is when they talk to their other nerdy friends, and one of them stumbles upon, an episode of Vikings and decides that they're going to be just that little bit closer that they need to be to then be adaptable to be someone who's going to end up in full Elizabethan gear and whatever. Like, you have them because they had somebody who was able to give them the thumbs up and say, this is a group of people who can be trusted.
Definitely. Agree.
And then in terms of actually physical boots on the ground things, aside from, Miles's great stories, it's just like putting them in cars and driving them. Some of them don't have cars. Once I started going to events, like, it was over. I was in the SCA. So just get them to an event in their Legolas cloak or their Boromir cloak. So you can be as nice as you want, but if they never get to go to events, they probably won't stay. So just be willing to offer some gas mileage to some people.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I just want to kind of, Elaine already talked about it, but the really empowering people, and especially specifically since we kind of focused on college-age kids, for groups that haven't been recruiting at colleges but could and are like established, be willing, like there is no report that is that important that if your college-age kid who's filling a role that doesn't have a lot of experience or like hasn't had a position of responsibility and they miss that report, the world will not end. And this is an opportunity for them to have responsibility, to have buy-in, and to like have something on their resume, and that's something that you can use as a like further thing to throw in the pot to say like, hey, like we have like yearly budgets of X number of dollars. Do you want to come like see this opportunity to get exposure to it? There's a lot of different tacks you can take, and it's about, again, the one thing is like, if there's the pitfall, it's not listening. Listen to what they need and what they're interested in and how you can bring them into the conversation, into the group, and then let them do it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Horacio. One of the stumbling blocks, the hurdles that I've seen people have is the kind of the flip side of that as well, expecting too much too soon of people. We need to listen to people and understand that if they're a college kid, if they're a young adult, if they're, somebody in Valka's situation where they're just kind of starting to get their feet underneath them, they can't come to fighter practice every single week necessarily. And we need to not guilt people when they can't make something. Or I've got to go to a job fair. I can't go to these 2 events because I'm trying to set my life up fresh out of college or while they're still in college. So absolutely understanding when they want and need and can handle extra responsibilities, but understanding when it's an okay time to kind of let them step back and remind them or reach out to them occasionally, hey, I'm still here when you need something, but not putting that additional pressure on them.
Agreed, for sure. Okay, I'm going to go to Ivo because he's had his hand up for a while, and then to John, and then back to panel members to do final thoughts.
No, don't worry about me. That hand is from last time.
Oh, okay. John?
Yeah. Two things real quick that haven't been brought up, but that probably should is one, when you're talking about recruitment, you're talking about having, it needs to be a long-term sustainable strategy. So, okay, you do this one thing at a college event once. Okay, can you do that, as a regular every month or every couple of months or every quarter or what have you? Because you need to maintain mind share. There's a story of during the Depression, there were a number of soup makers that went under, but the one that stayed, that managed to stay afloat through all of that was the one that kept on getting their message out that, hey, we're here, our product still is around, and that was Campbell Soup. So it would be useful to, when you're putting together your recruiting strategy, to go, okay, what kind of sustained effort can we do on a regular basis to keep getting new people in? Because you don't want to just put all your eggs in one event, in one basket. It's something, and the other thing is that maybe that person sees it one time or 2 times, but it's in their head, but they'll remember it the 3rd or 4th. Typically in marketing, people take action usually about the 20th exposure that they have to something. The other point I wanted to bring up was, it's, when you've done all this recruiting, and I don't know how you would go about this, but if your populace is somehow in tune with this welcoming of new people, how to listen to people, how to keep them engaged, how to let them share their interest and help get them to people, if on a populist level, and I don't know how you'd go about that, but making sure that people aren't inadvertently sabotaging, because we probably all know about that one person that's in the organization that really, either they're really negative or they're creepy or whatever, and they turn people away. So there's also the aspect of the people who are already in the organization being on that same sheet of music to be able to help with the retention. So, All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. We are at 7 after. So panel members, thank you so much for being here tonight. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to put out? Anything that we didn't get to that you want to cover?
So I would like to bring up something that was mentioned in the comments really briefly. Somebody mentioned, Her Excellency Katja, formerly Baroness of the Steppes, mentioned mentorships, and building those kind of networks are important, but we need to be very careful on how we're setting up mentorship programs, because on the one hand, they can be really, really awesome. On the other hand, they can lend themselves to predatory behavior. So we need to be very cautious and aware of who we're letting in. We need to have multiple points of monitoring, because ultimately, when it comes to retaining people, we can get them into the door all we want, but if we're not building up a safe network to keep them here and to make them feel welcome, we're not retaining them, and that's a total failure on our part. We've got them for 6 months and then they're gone, and then they're going to have those negative responses that we talked about earlier, as opposed to those positive responses of, it wasn't for me, but they were still really cool. You're going to get a lot of, it wasn't for me, and those people were kind of creepy. So be very cautious when you're building up those mentorship programs. Make it something like the local group has a full pool of people, and there's a lot of oversight. And that's just from a Senechalet perspective and seeing what's been going on recently in the world.
Yeah, definitely. Good point. Thank you.
So back to closing remarks. I've got a few. What's worked for me and my household with 30 young people they're all under like 40 in general, and certainly around my age, is the biggest three things are: let them be them and let them live their best selves and let them enjoy what they want to enjoy about the SCA. Also, recruit for friendship, not for attendance. I don't care if my members of my household or my young persons show up every week or every month to anything SCA related. I care that they're my friend, and if they show up to an event, I'm going to have a lot of fun, and I'm going to try to get them there at the event with them. They're going to enjoy it and have a great time. And then lastly, if you want to recruit younger people, you really should have younger people there to assist you. Feel free to reach out to any younger person in the SCA and funnel younger people to people in SCA. I, for one, don't care if I get a message from somebody in New York tomorrow who's young to the SCA. I'll build a friendship with them over the internet. That's what we do as millennials. So funnel them towards young people and reach out and have young people join. So those are my closing remarks for the panel tonight. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. Yep, agree with all of that. Anybody else?
Just say, listen to them, let them talk. They'll tell you what they want, and then do your best to accommodate that, versus getting stuck in the, this is what we've always done and this is what we'll always do.
Definitely.
Yep, be kind, listen, celebrate little gains.
That's so important. Like, let them have their little thing, even if it is the basest of base little tea tunics.
Yeah.
But oh my God, you made a thing.
Yeah, we all started somewhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for attending. I appreciate all of your insights. That was really awesome to have you guys participate, and thank you to everyone else who was here, and even if you were just listening or typing in the chat or made some comments, I really appreciate that as well. I will get the video posted tomorrow for anybody that missed it, and I hope you guys all have a great rest of your evening.
Night, everybody.
Night.
Thank you for hosting, Kat.
You're welcome.
Yep, thank you, Kat.
Thanks. Bye.